Hi all, it's Rambler here with an update to my thoughts on The Killing Joke, the animated movie. I wasn't going to do this. I was quite happy with the video I've done on this previously, or audio video, on my thoughts of the film after I'd seen it. But I wanted to do another one because I've been watching and reading a lot of reviews about the film from diehard DC fans and some of my favourite reviewers and critics of all time. Talk about their thoughts and feelings on the film. And everybody seems to have the same opinion in that the first half hour of the film sucks and the Killing Joke part is good, if not great. And I just want to say before I carry on, if you haven't seen the film yet, go and see it. I really do recommend you go and see it. And then come back and listen to what I have to say if you want to. Also, if you are of someone who has seen the film and agrees with the overall opinion that the first half hour sucks and that the Killing Joke part is great or good, then I respect that and I'm fine with that. The reason why I say that is because my opinion on the film is very backward compared to everybody else, in that I generally preferred the first half hour of the film compared to the Killing Joke part. And I'm just saying that. I'm not here to say that everyone who thinks the other way round is wrong or anything, or you're stupid or anything. Of course not. I believe I understand why people hate the first half hour and like the Killing Joke part. I'm not going to pretend that I understand it 100%, but I believe I have a good understanding of it. But I wanted to give you my reasons as to why I think the other way round. I thought the first half hour was good and the Killing Joke part was okay at the very best. The thing about the first half of the film, the first 30 minutes, is that there's one big major issue that everybody has a problem with, and again, I understand that, and that's the relationship between Batman and Batgirl. And the other major issue is that the writing for the first half hour of the film is considered to be awful compared to the Killing Joke part of the film, or the second part of the film, where everybody says that the writing is brilliant, and that it doesn't connect well, if at all, with the actual Killing Joke story. You could literally not watch the first half hour of the film. You could just fast forward or skip past it and get to the part of the film that actually deals with the Killing Joke story, and you wouldn't have missed out on anything, because it doesn't actually add anything to the story overall. And again, I agree with that. You can definitely skip past the first half hour and just watch the Killing Joke bit and that be it. But I don't think you should. I think if you haven't watched it yet, I think you should watch the whole thing. And I think that a lot of people who are upset with the first half of the film are upset primarily because of the Batman-Batgirl relationship that's established in the film. Now, spoiler warning, like I said, if you haven't seen the film yet, go and see it. If you have, great, or if you don't care, then continue listening, so this is a spoiler. But in the film, Batgirl and Batman have sex. Yeah, they do. And it's got people upset about it because within the DC universe, in terms of the comics and other animated movies and movies in general, that sort of relationship between Batgirl and Batman has, I don't believe anyway, been established at all or even explored. The general relationship between the two of them is like a sort of uncle-niece relationship. The reason being is that Batgirl is Barbara Gordon, who is the daughter of Jim Gordon, the police commissioner that Batman works for, or at least works with from time to time. And for them two, Batgirl and Batman, to have sex is kind of out of left field and and it's got a lot of people upset because, like I said, I don't believe in the DC universe that that angle between their relationship has been explored. And a lot of people have just condemned it and said it's wrong, it's out of place, it's fan fiction, it's terrible, blah, blah, blah. And, what were they thinking? And it might very well be that the people in general, the overall opinion I should say, is correct, in that maybe the writers who wrote that first half hour just did it primarily to just get people talking about the film. I don't know. As far as I'm aware, the people who wrote that first half of the film, Brian, I forget the name of the bloke now, I'll look it up in a second. They said they wanted to do something a bit more controversial because the actual story of the Killing Joke is controversial, and they just wanted to add even more controversy to it to make the whole film a controversial piece, which they've successfully done. Whether they meant to do it in the way that they did, I don't know. But I get why they had half an hour at the beginning of the film before the Killing Joke part, and that's because the Killing Joke, as a graphic novel, because that's what it originally was, is quite short. It's not mega short, but it's not long enough for a movie of its own right. I suppose they could have just basically have done the Killing Joke itself, had it as a 40-minute movie and be done with it. I'm sure that would have been absolutely fine. But I guess just to make it feel like it's an hour and 10 minutes or something like that, they just added in that extra half hour. And maybe they also did it to try and add weight and emphasis to the point in the Killing Joke where Barbara Gordon gets crippled by the Joker when he shoots her in the spine, or shoots her through the abdomen and it affects her spine type thing. Perhaps it was just to add weight to that, which I don't believe was needed really, and I agree with people saying if that was the case it wasn't needed, and I agree. But aside from that though, I don't have a problem with the first half hour of the film, because although it was a bit surprising when they did have sex, when I saw it in the cinema, I was there going, did that happen in the graphic novel? Yeah, I don't think it did. Although, I've only read parts of the graphic novel, I haven't read the whole thing, which is one of the reasons why I went to go and see the film, because I thought, I haven't read the novel, but to see it in film, that'd be great. I wasn't sure, but now I know that it doesn't happen in the graphic novel. I didn't actually think it was bad, and I didn't think it was, shocking or even... I just sort of went, oh, well, I suppose it makes sense, and then carried on with it. And the reason why I say that is because although, the relationship between Batgirl and Batman is this uncle niece thing, according to everyone else in the universe, you got to consider the context of why it happened. And I'm not saying it was done well, like the writing. I'm not going to praise the writing of the first half hour of the film. I'm not here to defend it and say, oh no, it's amazing and you're all wrong. No, of course not. But I think what they were trying to do, and at least it worked for me anyway, was basically reach a point in Batgirl and Batman's relationship where, Batman is trying to be that uncle figure with Batgirl, in that the gangster they were after in that half-hour segment was basically playing with Batgirl, in terms of he was manipulating her, he was emotionally toying with her, and she wasn't falling for it in terms of falling for his charms or anything, because otherwise, I would have been a bit sort of like, no, I don't think Batgirl would start falling in love with this gangster bloke, which is what this bloke was trying to do with her. She was adamant and saying, no, not interested, I'm just going to beat you, I'm not going to be fazed by your charm and your charisma, I'm going to get you, I'm going to arrest you, do it by the book, yada yada yada. I believe Batgirl was trying to do that, but she is at least depicted in the first half hour of the film much younger in mindscape and attitude compared to Batman, because Batman is a lot older as Bruce Wayne. And when Batman tells Batgirl to get off the case of this gangster they're after, and the reason being that he says that he's not scared of you, which he isn't, because he's toying with her, and he says, I want him scared, I thought that made sense from Batman's perspective. I want you off the case because he's not scared of you, and therefore he's going to get to you, and that's just a liability, and I don't want that to happen because you could get hurt, and I don't want you to get hurt type thing, and also it makes it difficult for us to take him down. I got that. I thought there was no problem with that from Batman's perspective. But when Batgirl argues and fights back against him, saying, no, you don't treat me like a child. I'm a grown woman and I'm going to do it. I'm doing fine. You can't keep treating me like a child. I got that angle as well. And I didn't think that made Batgirl weak or whiny girl or anything. You've got to consider the fact that she's not as experienced in crime fighting as Batman is. Batman's been doing it for a long time compared to Batgirl, at least in this half hour anyway. I'm not saying that this is the relationship in the whole of the DC universe, don't get me wrong. But in this half hour, she's a lot more inexperienced than Batman. Not saying she's weak, just saying inexperienced, she's new to the game. And, she's going to have that. And because she's younger and therefore more eager and committed and strong-minded, as a lot of young people are when you're young. I was once. and maybe still am to some degree, but I know I'm getting older and fatter. Yeah, she obviously takes offence by that because she doesn't want to be treated like a kid with Batman, because that's what her dad does for her. You know, her dad is her dad, and I'm not saying Jim Gordon treats Batgirl like a kid, but she's already got that sort of daughter-father relationship with Gordon, because that makes sense. But with Batman, she's obviously doesn't want that. She wants to be able to exercise her independence, exercise her ability to do justice and do what she wants to do and fight crime in this case. And to work with Batman is quite an honour and a privilege. And she is hoping that their relationship is professional. And she believes at that point that Batman is wrong to get rid of her. Because what he's saying about her not being scared of, the gangster not being scared of her and being manipulated, she doesn't agree with. She thinks, no, I'm gonna beat him. It's all right. I'm not letting him get to me, and I understand that. So they have this little argument where she's basically saying, "No, don't belittle me like a child," and he's like going, "No, you've got to go off. I'm not belittling you like a child. You know, you have to come off the case because I want him scared. He's not scared of you. It makes it more difficult." And then they have their tussle and the proper fight, and it gets quite physical. They start physically fighting one another, and then she lands on top of him and pins him to the ground. And that's where the sex starts. And I personally think that in that particular situation, it's a feasible situation. Everyone's emotions running high, and everyone's passionate about their argument. They turn into a fight, although I have to say it's Batgirl who's doing more of the attacking. Batman's kind of defending and trying to push her away as opposed to hurting her. So he's got that protective feeling. And yeah, emotions are running high, passions are running high from both sides. In that moment where it's got to a fight, the adrenaline's kicking in, etc., you're not going to be thinking straight all the way. And then when she does kiss him and he accepts it, I personally thought, well, that's a possible outcome in that situation. That's feasible. Both care for one another in terms of the fact that Batman doesn't want Batgirl to get hurt because obviously she's Jim Gordon's daughter and maybe his protege. But at the same time, he's older than her. He's got that sort of perhaps parental instinct with her. And also the fact that, she's also his student. And therefore, if he says to her, you have to get off the case, you've got it wrong, and he's telling her that, then from a teacher-student perspective, that makes sense. So there is that relationship there. And from Batgirl's perspective, obviously she's the student who doesn't want to be belittled, yada, yada, yada. It doesn't necessarily mean there's a romance between them, and I didn't get that impression that there's a romance between them. But when passions are running high and those two people are fighting, then it can happen. It's a human thing to do. I'm not saying it happens every time. No, of course not. But it's possible. And I thought within the context when they do, it was just, a passionate, emotional moment. That was it. And they both went with it. You've got to remember that both of these characters, as much as we see them as superheroes and therefore capable of doing things we can't do, and they're very just and what have you, in the DC universe, and especially between Batgirl and Batman, they're not super-powered people. They're not supermen or superwomen. They're human beings with human emotions. And yes, there's an age difference as well. Bruce Wayne, I think, is in his 40s in this, or in his 40s or 50s, I'm not sure. And Batgirl's in her 20s. But it's in that sort of moment where you're working closely with one another, which they have been doing, it's possible. It's basic psychology in terms of the fact that if you work closely with someone for a long time and you're with them for a long time, especially if you're heterosexual, man and woman, although I'm sure it happens with man on man in terms of a gay relationship and female for lesbian relationship, etc. Either way, when you spend time with some person and you get more involved with them, not necessarily on a romantic level, just on a professional level or friendship level, blah, 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 and you spend more time with one another, you develop a rapport, and you're more likely to develop, more likely, I say, not 100%, more likely to develop feelings for one another, even if you don't necessarily acknowledge it or what have you just are likely to. Even if they're very small and minor and buried beneath each other, like you may be, when you're on your own, you think about it, the other person thinks about it too, but you never really act on it type thing. It can happen. And I think in that moment where they do have sex, it's just one of those feelings coming to the surface type thing, but not necessarily meaning that, oh my God, there's always been a romance, that's blasphemy, blah, 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 blah. No, there wasn't a romance, because afterwards, when they've had sex, it's the next day, Batgirl is being ignored by Batman, and I'm sure Batman's feeling pretty awful about what happened, because he consented with it as well. Okay, Batgirl made the first moves, and I can understand people being upset. Oh, it has to be Batgirl that makes the first move. Oh, that's so misogynistic, and oh, that's so anti-feminism, blah, blah, blah. No, it's not. It's just, in that situation, she did it. Could have easily been the other way around. It's got nothing to do with that. But once it's happened and Batman consents with it, then yeah, afterwards he's probably thinking, oh my god, what did I do? Ah, Jesus. Oh. He doesn't know how to deal with it. He's never had that happen to him. And that's why he blanks her in the second half of the first half of the film. And she's not sure either, afterwards she's like, oh, it happened as well. And even though in the morning, she's, the next scene after they have sex is her in the bathroom in her flat, and that's when she says, what have you done? Even she's like, well, they both don't know what happened. It just happened. And it can happen in close relationships. Even though the context is that she's Gordon's daughter and Batman works with Gordon and it seems weird, it can happen. Even with an age difference. And I honestly thought in that sex scene in the whole first half hour, I just thought, yeah, I get it. They're trying to provide a human moment. They're trying to make these characters appear human because they are. And I thought the after effect of it for the first half hour was fine. There's no romance between them. She just, she contacts him eventually she's been trying to contact him. He eventually responds to her when she does contact him again. And, she wants to just go back to how it was. She said, look, it's just sex. It doesn't have to mean anything, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. It happens. People have sex and it doesn't have to mean anything. I had no problem with it. I didn't think there was any misogynism involved. I didn't think there was any feminism involved or any quirking of the characters. I thought it was just treated fine. It was just a human thing. And then, okay, it doesn't add anything to the Killing Joke, but then I thought, well, it kind of doesn't have to. It's just something to get you involved in the film. That's all. It's just a story. That's all. And you just think, okay, cool, well, whatever's, that's fine. And I thought they handled it pretty well at the end. And okay, she retires from crime fighting. And again, I know a lot of people were upset saying that if that's their reasoning for why Batgirl retires from crime fighting before the Killing Joke happens, then yeah, I'm not going to lie, you could probably have done it a completely non-sexual way. Of course you could. And if people are upset by that, then fine. Again, I respect that. That's fine. But all I'm saying is that for that first half hour of the film, I didn't have a problem with it. I'm not saying it couldn't have been done better. I think it could have been done better, definitely. But the actual concept and the events that happened, I thought was fine. I really didn't mind. And I didn't think the writing was that terrible either. I don't think the writing was great or original or groundbreaking, but I certainly don't think it was bad, atrocious, and everybody should chuck it down the drain or anything. It was the worst thing ever. No, I just thought it was okay. That's all. But that's my opinion on it. I generally don't have a problem with the first half hour of the film. But if you do, I perfectly understand and I respect that, and that's fine. I'm not saying you should change your opinion. All I'm saying is that I'm just giving you mine because nobody else seems to like it. Maybe I am the only person who likes it. Fine. But I'm just telling you why I like it. I thought it was an okay human-to-human interaction moment. That's different. Yes, it was controversial. I agree. Should it have happened? Well, that's up to you. Personally, I just thought it's just a different spin on things. That's it. Doesn't have to mean anything. End of story. But I liked it. But I will agree that it doesn't connect with the Killing Joke whatsoever. Like, you can completely skip it and go to the Killing Joke part of the film and you wouldn't have missed anything because they don't mention it in the Killing Joke. So I get that. I totally agree with that. Yes, it could have definitely been written better, but I still think the idea itself was sound. And in terms of people who like the Killing Joke and praising the writing of the Killing Joke part of the film compared to the writing of the first one, again, I understand that the people like the writing compared to the first half hour of the film. The writing of the Killing Joke part was better, and I agree to some extent. It certainly is. But this, now I'm going to talk about the Killing Joke part of the film in more detail. I said before in my first audio video, that I didn't like it in general because it wasn't very funny. I still stand by that, but I'm not going to go into that in too much detail because I've already talked about it. I get that this novel and this story is not meant to be funny. It's meant to be dark, it's meant to be a character study of the Joker, and it's meant to give some possible origin to him, and I understand why people really like the story for that angle. Not just that angle, but for that angle. Because the Joker is, in my opinion, the best comic book villain out there. That's just my opinion, or at least one of the best. I love the Joker. I love the concept. I love the idea behind him. I like the fact that he's Batman's antithesis, but I think they've gone a bit too deep with saying that they need one another to survive. I did like that at some, when I was younger. I really liked that idea of, oh god, Batman can't survive without the Joker can't survive without the Batman. We saw it towards the end of the Dark Knight film, the Christopher Nolan film. They talk about that. They talk about it in the games, the Arkham Asylum, Arkham City games. They have that relationship going. It's really cool, but I also think that it's gone a bit too deep that way. I just think, no, you don't need to keep talking about it. Mention it once or twice as a possibility, but just carry on with them doing what they do best. They don't necessarily need one another to survive. Perhaps the Joker does for Batman. Batman doesn't need the Joker or anything, whatever. But I get the whole concept of why they keep fighting and how they're the antithesis of one another, and he's Batman's arch nemesis pretty much. Yeah, I get that. I know why people like that sort of thing, and I did, and do to a certain point. And that's not what the Killing Joke's necessarily about. The Killing Joke is just about his viewpoint on things, and also Batman says that at some point one or both of them are going to die. There's going to be an encounter between the two of them where one of them's going to die at the very least. And in the graphic novel and in the film, Batman says that he wants to be able to at least say that in that moment when it happens, I want to have been able to have said that at least I tried to reach out to him. And I think that's one of the better parts of the story, where he tries to reach out to the Joker. But at the same time, I also think it's one of the worst, because it's kind of out... I thought that was a bit out of character and out of left field, considering what the Joker's done and what he does in the bloody story and in the film and all that. I thought, you really still want to reach out to him? I'm not saying that you want to kill him, but... What? I thought that was a bit weird. But anyway, going back on track, the whole exploration of the Joker's origin story... I've got to be honest, I do like the scenes where he's the comedian, the failed comedian who used to work at the chemical factory, and he's got his missus and the baby and what have you. I quite like that, and I think in the film they do that bit the best. I think that's probably, those flashbacks are the best parts of the Killing Joke. That and the still shots of the Joker at the doorway about to shoot Barbara Gordon. There's just frames of animation I talked about where he looks really evil. I like that. And the moment where in the flashback he, as the Red Hood, is intimidated by Batman at the chemical factory when he does the robbery with the gangsters, and he gets intimidated and says, no, I'm not who I am. No, I'm not the Red Hood. It's all... And then he falls over into the chemical vat. And then when he comes out and he starts laughing, and you get that famous close-up shot of him clutching his hair, looking really demonic, going, ha! When he's lost his mind. Brilliant animation. Very scary. And a couple of other shots in the film as well, depicting the people who are all Joker-faced from the poison he does with them. Again, very good. Again, the animation of the Killing Joke part of the film I thought was very good for the most part. I liked that. But I think my biggest problem with it is just the story. I just thought the story was very clumsily written. I really don't praise the writing as much as everybody else is. I don't think it's, again, like bad or the worst thing ever. Of course not. But I just thought it was really clunkily done. I do believe it could have been written better, and I certainly believe it could have been written with the Joker still able to make the reader, or the audience in the movie's case, laugh with him. And I didn't laugh with him in this film and in the novel. Not because of, oh my god, how could he expect me to laugh with him after all the stuff he's doing and the stuff he's talking about? What a monster! I'm not that monster! No, it wasn't that. It was the fact that he just wasn't funny. He was not funny. And the Joker is meant to be funny. That's his point. Now, you could argue that, well, he's a failed comedian, therefore he's not always going to be funny because he's the Joker, but he's also a failed comedian and therefore blah, blah, blah. That's one of the problems I have with the origin story put forward in this, in that, well, if he's a failed comedian, then why is he so funny as the Joker? It just seems a bit of a 180. I know it's meant to be a 180 style thing, but I just have trouble believing that. But it just wasn't very funny, and I think it could have been so much darker if the Joker made some jokes about the situation when he shoots Barbara Gordon. He's torturing Gordon, after that, with all the images of her paralysed and stripped naked, and he's on that ghost train malarkey being tormented naked himself. I still think he could have been funny. That musical number as well in the film, when the Joker does his musical number, that was rubbish. I thought that was really stiff and clunky. I just was watching it and I was just there going, this isn't flowing very well. It felt very forced and very. It just didn't feel natural to the film or natural to the plot. I don't know if that's in the graphic novel either, but that musical bit he does when Gordon's on the ghost train and he's tormenting him, I didn't like that at all. I thought it was very. It just didn't feel natural. It didn't feel very Jokery, although I'm sure the Joker would do something like that. It just felt a bit sort of flat. I didn't like that bit. And also all of the monologuing that the Joker does, especially when he's in the flat after shooting Barbara Gordon, Barbara Gordon. I really didn't find it that interesting. I really, actually, honestly thought throughout the whole thing he was completely out of character. I'm not saying that the Joker can't be philosophical about things and give his own take. I mean, we saw it in The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger's Joker and the way he was written, constantly talking about, his perspective on things and why he does what he does without a plan, with a plan, turning things on their head, blah, 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 blah. It's cool, but it shouldn't be the whole thing he talks about. But that's all he does. And the whole point of the story is to try and break Gordon because of the fact that the Joker became the Joker because of one bad day. Where he says, in the flashbacks of the Joker's possible origin story, he's a failed comedian, so he doesn't make it big on the comedian racket. He's not making any money for his missus and their baby. And they're living in a rundown flat in the rough part of Gotham. He's trying to make it, and then he gets involved in this robbery to try and make some easy money so that he can move his missus out, because he does care for his missus, and I believe that. I believe the relationship between this Joker origin and his missus was good. And then while they're talking about the robbery, the police come and visit him and tell him that his missus has died in a really freak accident. Like, apparently she gets burnt by an electric toaster going wrong, and it was only a 1 in a million chance of it happening that could have killed her. Christ, that's bad. He's lost his baby, that's double bad. And then he's forced into the robbery anyway, triple bad maybe. And then after the robbery, when he gets intimidated by Batman, although Batman doesn't push him or meant for him to fall into the chemical vat, it all goes wrong and he's bleached and coloured and he's like, oh, and he goes and turns to the Joker. To him, that's one bad day. I'm sorry, but that's not one bad day. That is one catastrophically bad day. That is not a normal bad day for people to experience, even in a regular basis or in an unregular basis. That is just effed up what happened to the Joker. I would not call that a bad day. I just call that as, dude, God or the devil or whatever, he really hates you. And if not the God and the devil, the universe really hates you. That ain't a bad day. That's a bad life. So his whole argument, the Joker's argument throughout the story, is that I had one bad day and I turned into this crazy person. I gave into it and I found it funny. I'm going to do the same to Gordon, because he's very professional. He stands by the law. He stands by the book. He's very good and uncorruptible, blah, blah, blah. If he has one bad day, then he should fall over too. He should be like me. And then he brings it over to Batman, because obviously Batman gets involved because he has to go and save Gordon and blah, blah, blah. And then even the Joker's like, I've made you've had a bad day as well. That was the thing as well. He says after he does the Gordon thing, Gordon doesn't cave in, by the way, after the ghost train thing. He's all paralysed after seeing his daughter all stripped and bloodied and stuff. But he still doesn't break. He's, after all that, he's like, no, I want you to go get him, Batman, but do it by the book. Do not kill him. I don't want him destroyed. I don't want him murdered. I don't want him hurt. Do it by the book. So Gordon's not broken after his bad day. Which, don't get me wrong, is a bad day, because his daughter is shot and paralysed and possibly raped. It's implied in the film, maybe, but in the graphic novel it isn't, so whatever. That's up for you to decide. But he doesn't crack, and then he goes after the Joker, and the Joker's bought this theme park thing, and they're fighting this funhouse thing, and the Joker manages to corner him, and he said, you've had a bad day, Batman, because your parents died in front of you. That's bad, and blah 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 blah. Why can't you crack? Why haven't you cracked like me? And then Batman turns it round and he pins him against the wall, and he said, because I didn't find it funny the first time, and you did. I'm like, well, fair enough, but at the same time you could argue that Batman did crack after his parents were killed on that bad day, because he became this creature of the night who hunts down criminals and stops them, and he's got this sense of justice and what have you, but he could have easily have cracked as well. Maybe that's the point of the story, maybe, but I was just like, yeah, I don't care. And even though Batman's parents died, the Joker lost his missus and his baby and was caught in the. I think the Joker still had a worse day than Batman and anybody he tries to make them go through in the story. I'm not saying that they don't all have a bad day; they do. But Jesus Christ, the Joker's just like, wow, you dude, they hate you, man. No wonder why you'd crack. I probably would have cracked under the same thing. But but the Joker was broke as well, whereas Bruce Wayne was a multi-billionaire from his parents. So Bruce Wayne still had a load of money and resources, and he had a loving butler, Alfred, who took care of him as well. He still had a lot of support after his parents died. The Joker had nothing, no support whatsoever. And Gordon had the support of Batman and his police force. And once he found out that Barbara was okay, she wasn't dead, he had that support to get him through it. The Joker didn't have that support. So again, this whole one bad day malarkey, I'm like, it's just not a very strong plot point for me to make this a worthy story. And I thought the writing overall was just very, very... It was trying to be very deep and trying to be very poetic and trying to be different. And I won't deny, when the graphic novel came out back in the 1988 that is, I can understand why a lot of people read it and liked it, because it would have been very different to what they were used to in the comics. I get that angle. I sadly have not been able to enjoy it in 1988. I wasn't born yet. I was born in 89. So back then, it would have been more impactful. But it just goes to show that this has got dated, because everybody else has done loads of dark stories with the Joker, blah, 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 blah. It's not the manual's fault. It's not the movie's fault. It just is what it is. But I thought it was very clunky and very clumsy. And the ending bit, I did like the ending between Batman and the Joker. And I like the idea at the ending, both in the graphic novel and in the film, that it's possible that after the Joker tells the joke and Batman and Joker start laughing together and they're sort of like in stitches waiting for the police to turn up. It's sort of like in the film, the camera pans down to the ground where it's raining, I think, or it's like a puddle of water or something. And then the laughter stops and then the movie stops. And in the graphic novel, it cuts to a panel where I think it's showing Gotham skylight or something, and the laughter stopped from both of them. And that's the end. And it implies that it's possible, but that Batman supposedly broke the Joker's neck and ended it. Which would make sense in terms of the novel's title, The Killing Joke, and the Killing Joke in the film. That's the Killing Joke. Joker tells his joke, makes Batman laugh, and then snaps his neck. Ta-da! But it's also implied that didn't happen. I think it's deliberately left ambiguous for the reader to make their own minds up. Personally, I don't think he would have killed Joker at that point. I really don't. But whatever. Point being is it's ambiguous, and whichever argument or side you're on at the ending is fine. And I think that's really good, and I like the ending, and the film does the ending well as well. Still clunky, but fine. But I'm going to close off this audio video, because I've got to go in a minute, with the fact that I did a bit of research on the novel, why it's widely praised and stuff, and pretty much for the points that I've said, and more. There's some points I haven't talked about that still people like about it, and that's fine. But what I will close it on was the original writer of The Killing Joke, Alan Moore, who is considered to be one of the greatest comic book writers out there. Alan Moore said in an interview in 2003, and backed it up in 2008, that he was displeased with The Killing Joke. Okay? Alan Moore, the writer of The Killing Joke, was displeased with it. And he said it for the same reasons I said it. He thought it was clunky, he thought it was clumsy, he thought it was too dark, and I thought it was certainly too dark. And that the other bit he didn't like, though I didn't have a problem with, but he sort of did, was the act of the Joker crippling Barbara Gordon. He said at the time that I wanted to give it a bit of a hook. That was the only thing I could think of. I went and talked to my editor to say, is this going to be okay? Would it might be conceived as being, a bit anti-feminism and a bit belittling of the women characters in this book, in the story. And the editor, I can't remember his name, but the editor in question just said, yeah, cripple the bitch. And Alan Moore said that I wish that they'd reined me in a bit and really scrutinised it, because I'm worried that it set off this precedence that female characters are treated less worthy and less independently and less well than male characters. And I can understand that, but personally, I think in the context of the story, I think it's fine, because Batgirl goes on to be, or Barbara Gordon goes on to be the Oracle, and she goes on to be one of the greatest superheroes in that, even though she's disabled, she can basically track crime and take crime down without moving from her chair. You know, she's that powerful, she's all-knowing, she's all-seeing, because she sets up this huge computer network and hacks into all the cameras and stuff of Gotham City, and all the other sort of DC Universe heroes, not just in Batman but also in the DC Universe, rely on her later on for her skills. So in a way, yeah, it created one of the best and most respected, and I like her, disabled superheroes. I think that's really cool. But whatever, that's for people's debate. But yeah, I'll close that saying that Alan Moore didn't like his novel either. It considers it to be one of his inferior works. Doesn't mean that it is inferior. I'm not trying to say, ha, see, you're wrong. You think it's superior, the writer thinks it's inferior. No, there's many cases where the writers of famous works, like Anthony Burgess, I believe, wrote The Clockwork Orange. He didn't like that. He thought it was inferior, but everybody thought it was his best work, even though he wrote loads of other stuff after that and said, no, this is my best work, this is my best work. No, everybody hounded him about Clockwork Orange. And I like The Clockwork Orange, the novel that is. I thought it was good. But he hated it. And H.P. Lovecraft, with his short horror stories, a lot of the ones that he wrote that people really love, he wasn't a big fan of, or felt indifferent towards them, or thought they were rubbish. But people think they're great, you know, so I get that angle as well, don't get me wrong. But I was impressed and interested to note that when I gave my opinion saying it wasn't very funny and I thought it was a bit clunky, so did the writer. So I thought, fair enough. So at least it gives me some credibility in my opinion. Not the right credibility, like I'm right or anything, but it gave me some credibility to think, no, I was, at least somebody else thinks that this whole Killing Joke story and the movie and all that, because the movie, by the way, really does stick to the graphic novel very well, and I'll give the movie kudos for doing that. I'm glad it does, despite the first half hour of the film. But I thought it was clunky, and even the writer did. So I thought, oh, wow, I can't be the only one who thinks that as well. But it doesn't mean I'm right, just means that my opinion at least has some weight behind it, that's all. But that's all I'm going to say. I mean, you know, again, the voice acting was fine. I love Mark Hamill as the Joker. Kevin Conroy's Batman was great. The animation was great. The music was subtle but good. I like the music in the film as well. The music was subtle but good. And, you know, it was visually an entertaining piece to watch. It certainly was. So, again, all the usual kudos for the film was fantastic. Even in the first half hour, I thought the animation was fine. Occasional stiff character animations, but that was in both half, where you weren't quite sure what emotion they were trying to depict that happened, but that didn't matter. The city shots were great, the colours were great. I love all that. It was good. But I'm just here to talk about the first half hour and the Killing Joke in terms of the story and the writing, that's all. But that's just my opinion. Like, what I'm saying is, that's my opinion, so please leave whatever comments you want down below, saying I'm right, I'm wrong, I'm an idiot, blah, 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 likes, dislikes, please do. Again, I'm quite happy for it, just because I believe in freedom of speech, so I've said my bit. Now go ahead and say your bit in the comments, and I'll read them, and perhaps maybe we'll reassess this in the future. But until then, can I say thank you very much for listening to this, if you have done. Hope you're well, and take it easy, have a good one, and I will hope to see you in another video. So bye for now.